Okay, picture this. It's 2026. The world is absolutely swimming in cheap oil and gas. Now, you'd think that would be the moment the whole green energy transition just grinds to a halt, right? Well, it's just not that simple. We are staring down the barrel of a massive energy paradox where the old system is doing better than ever while the new one is hitting some really serious roadblocks.
And this really forces us to ask the big question: is the green energy transition actually stalling out? But the answer isn't a simple yes or no. What we're seeing is a story of two completely different journeys, happening at the exact same time.
On one side, you've got a world that is just awash in traditional fossil fuels. The pipes are there, the supply is high, everything's established. But on the other side, the path for green tech is, well, it's winding, it's uncertain, and it is really, really complicated. It truly is a tale of two transitions. So let's start with the old guard.
First up, fossil fuels. Forget everything you remember about shortages and crazy price spikes. For 2026, the real story is one of a comfortable, even massive surplus.
I mean, this number right here tells you everything you need to know. An average price of just $57 a barrel for Brent crude. A number that low screams one thing: there is way too much supply out there, and that's putting downward pressure on everything. So what's causing this glut?
Well, it really just comes down to simple supply and demand. Supply is just overwhelming demand. As you can see from this chart, we're expecting a surplus in the global oil market for every single quarter of 2026. This is mostly being driven by OPEC Plus nations pumping more oil, which basically means storage tanks are just going to keep filling up all year long. Now, of course, there are always wild cards in this game. Geopolitical risks, especially anything involving Russia and Iran, could still throw a wrench in the works and cause some price spikes. But the underlying fundamental picture for oil, it remains one of a comfortable, abundant supply. And you know what? It is the exact same story for natural gas. The forecast for European prices is an average of just 30 euros per megawatt hour. Again, that points to a market that is feeling very, very comfortable with how much supply it has.
And here's the big reason why the market is so confident. We're about to see a massive wave of new liquefied natural gas, that's LNG, export terminals coming online, especially from the US and Qatar. All this new capacity basically guarantees that Europe has more than enough gas to go around.
And this quote from ING's head of commodities strategy, Warren Patterson, just sums it all up perfectly. For traditional energy, 2026 is a buyer's market, plain and simple. But remember, that's only one half of our paradox.
So, you might be wondering, with fossil fuels being this cheap, how can the green transition possibly compete? Well, Europe has an answer. You make pollution itself expensive. And their key tool is the EU's carbon market, officially known as the Emissions Trading System, or ETS.
And wow, what a contrast this is. The forecast for the price of carbon allowances is 84 euros per ton. This is moving in the complete opposite direction of oil and gas prices. And make no mistake, this is a deliberate policy choice designed specifically to accelerate the transition.
So why the huge price hike? Well, it's because the EU is structurally tightening the market. They are actively pulling pollution permits out of the system, using things like the Market Stability Reserve and getting rid of the free allowances they used to give to certain industries. Simply put, they are making it more and more expensive to emit CO2.
Okay, so cheap fossil fuels are being counteracted by expensive carbon. This should be the perfect environment for renewables to thrive, right? Well, the path forward is proving to be a lot more complicated than anyone expected.
First, let's start with the good news. Solar and wind are still absolutely poised for robust growth. They are by far the fastest growing part of the global energy system, and that's not changing.
But, and this is a big but, here's where the story gets really complicated. The reasons why renewables are growing are changing dramatically. It's not just about sustainability or climate goals anymore. Now it's about geopolitics, it's about technology, and it's about national security.
I mean, just look at these new engines of growth. In the US, it's the unbelievable soaring demand for electricity from new AI data centers. In Europe, it's a desperate scramble for energy security and independence from Russia. And for China, it's all about strategic competition and dominating global manufacturing. Totally different motivation.
But all this growth is revealing a major pain point. This table highlights a critical vulnerability for the West: a massive dependence on foreign manufacturing. For the core components of solar panels, we're talking cells and wafers, both the US and Europe are hugely reliant on imports. This creates a giant dilemma.
Do you buy the cheaper components from abroad and stay dependent? Or do you spend a fortune to build your own, secure, but much more expensive supply chains?
And that brings us to what might be the toughest part of the entire transition: the next generation technologies, the ones that are supposed to solve the hardest decarbonization challenges. Because right now, a lot of them seem to be stuck in neutral.
Take carbon capture and storage, or CCS. On paper, the idea is simple enough. You capture CO2 from a source, like a factory, then you transport it, and then you store it permanently deep underground. Simple, right?
Well, in reality, it faces this huge classic chicken and egg problem. Nobody wants to build the expensive capture facilities if there's no guaranteed transport and storage. And nobody wants to build the transport and storage without the capture facilities. And on top of all that, the costs are way higher than expected, running somewhere between $100 and $250 per ton.
And then we have hydrogen. The report we're looking at uses a really brilliant analogy for this one. Hydrogen's development is like childhood, and right now it is stuck firmly in the baby phase. It's still just learning from small pilot projects, trying to figure out what even works from a technical standpoint.
And the reasons why it's stalled are pretty clear. The costs are just stubbornly high, there's very weak demand for the final product, and we're seeing a ton of high-profile projects getting canceled. It seems like after all that initial hype, the entire industry has basically gone back to the drawing board.
And this quote just drives the point home. This isn't some far-off problem. The report notes that last year was already an incredibly challenging year for actually getting these projects off the ground and built. The reality is definitely set in.
So we're left with this incredibly complex picture. On one hand, fossil fuels are cheap, and they are everywhere. The policy response, at least in Europe, is making carbon expensive. But the new technologies that we desperately need are facing sky-high costs, supply chain bottlenecks, and a stalled rollout. And all of that leaves us with the ultimate question for 2026. In a world of cheap energy, who exactly is going to pay for this very, very expensive transition?